This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Let's begin at Old Trafford, a win for Arsenal, and you'll take 3 points on the opening day, however you play, Brian. Another set-piece goal, another questionable bit of United goalkeeping. How very 2024-25, but green shoots, as well as Matthias Cunha shoots a lot, perhaps, for Ruben Amorim. Elsewhere, the season kicked off with a great game at Anfield. Beautiful tributes for Diogo Jota before a really open game. Surely Liverpool should do what they did last year. In the end, Federico Chiesa scored the key goal in a game marred by the racist abuse of Antoine Semenyo, who was quite brilliant on the night. Also, Tijjani Reijnders looks wonderful. Sunderland spent 2 hours at the top of the table, and Richarlison scores a good goal and then a great goal as Thomas Frank sticks the knife into Ange by adapting his tactics for his opponents. Chris Wood carries on where he left off. Brighton carry on giving up points. Eze and Gay start for Palace, and Newcastle play well but look like they don't have a centre forward. There's horrendous monorail correction to make. Your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning. Good morning.
Good morning, Max.
Welcome, Nicky Bandini.
Morning.
And hello to Lars Sivertsen.
Good morning, Max.
All right, one round of games. Let's jump to some conclusions. Beginning at Old Trafford, Manchester United 0, Arsenal 1. I think, Barry, you could say Man United were better, didn't they? They were better than they were last season. They were the better side. Amorim after the game said, "We've proved today that we can win any game in the Premier League," which I think is a stretch because they didn't, but still.
Yeah, they proved they could win any game in the Premier League except the one they just played. I would say, yeah, I think they did deserve to win. I think they were the better team. I think the only positive Arsenal can take from that game, and it's a very, very, very big one, is that they won. They were quite lucky to do so, but they won because they exploited one of Manchester United's very obvious weaknesses, which is their goalkeeping area, because they maximised one of their own obvious strengths, which is their defence. And they were a little bit lucky, but they got the 3 points, and that's something they don't do very often at Old Trafford. So while the performance, I don't think it's a stretch to say it was poor from Arsenal, they won, and that could be a massive 3 points by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really create, I can't think of a clear chance, Nicky. I mean, by the time the ball gets to Calafiori, that is a clear chance, I think it's fair to say. But it is, I mean, the key moment is the goal, isn't it? And it's so, it's just all the cliches of Arsenal being really good at set pieces, Man United not being good at defending them. And then this kind of weird, I thought Joe Hart broke it down. I don't know if you saw a match today too quite well, comparing Raya and Bayindir and what you're meant to do as a goalkeeper and why it's kind of a foul, but it's not a foul. But at the end of the day, you sort of think, Manchester United have spent loads of money, but yet haven't fixed anything back there.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, definitely, just to preface this entire show, there's a phrase in Italian that August football is a lie è un bugiardo, and it is a bit, right? I think taking sweeping conclusions for anything right now is always a bit dangerous. But yeah, it's about as unimpressive as Arsenal could be while still winning the game, which they did. And impressive in some ways, right? Because there was resilience. There was a certain amount of, I thought Mikel Arteta put it quite interestingly after the game, where he said, what we did well was that every time we made a mistake, we recovered, basically. Every time we made a mistake, we got back to positions and defended well, which is, he said, basically, we made a lot of unforced errors, but we were always able to keep our heads and not panic in those moments. And I think that's probably the best thing you could say about Arsenal's performance. Other than that, they also still know how to do set pieces really well and score from them. I thought that the Man United were definitely the better side, even while laughing at Amorim, because it's a ridiculous thing to say we've proven we can beat anyone when you haven't beaten someone. I mean, that's exactly the one thing that they didn't do was win the game. The goalkeeping thing, I think, absolutely. I just want to, like you, defer to Joe Hart on this because he's really spoke about it, I thought, properly, thoughtfully and in detail in a way that we don't often hear from goalkeepers in analysis. So that was really interesting. But there was also the much more basic version, I suppose, that came from Roy Keane on the live coverage, where he said, you need to come for that ball with violence, which of course is a very Roy Keane way to put it. You need to come for it with violence. But I think there was that contrast, wasn't there, with how passive Bayern was in that moment, because he did just let himself get bullied by Saliba. Saliba got underneath him, and whether it was a foul or not, I think certainly when you look at the area on that ball going in, I think you'd be very hard pressed to give that as a free kick, given there was several other contacts going on in the area at the same time that were also on the same borderline. I think you can certainly say Bayern does not use his force nearly well enough. And then later in the same game, you see David Raya come and really take a proper swing at a ball and get that strong fist on it and get it clear. And you see that's the contrast. That is what Roy Keane's version of it is, coming for the ball with violence. So I think it feels a bit silly to boil the whole game down to one thing. But sometimes, Ruben Amorim, the difference between showing you can win a game or not is being able to take the chance. And I suppose taking the chance in this case would have been Bayern taking the chance to get that ball while he still had a chance to.
Lars, do you want to analyse this game with violence?
Well, yeah, it's as far be it from Roy Keane to argue that violence is the solution to anything. It doesn't seem to happen very often. The thing that occurs to me with those situations is, especially when you have ex-pros comparing, well, back in my day, the goalkeeper would just lamp him. I think this is a sort of unintended consequence of VAR, to be honest, because we are seeing goalkeepers penalised more for like when they go for the big punch and accidentally punch someone in the head, which is probably a good thing. I don't think they should be allowed to punch people in the head, but it does also mean they are at a kind of an imbalance in those corner situations, because the attacker or the player from the attacking team can lean on the goalkeeper all he wants because he doesn't really risk anything. Worst case scenario, you give away a foul and you've lost the corner, and it happens. If the goalkeeper's going to give him a big shove and just kind of move him out the way, there is a small chance that you give away a penalty doing that, because just pushing people is kind of a foul. Now, we don't see them given, but one day we are going to see them given. And I think the goalkeepers know at the back of their minds that they can't do whatever they want anymore. And that just creates this sort of weird imbalance there. I have some sympathy with what Amorim said. He kind of needs to push the player away, but then his arms, which are supposed to be used to catch the ball, are busy pushing the player away. So it's a whole thing. I think you're going to need players. You almost need to task a defender by those set pieces. That if someone's going to lean on the goalkeeper, you need a bigger defender to lean on him. And we know Arsenal do this. I mean, it tends to be Ben White more often, doesn't it? But in this case, it wasn't. But there tends to be someone from Arsenal who does this job, and I feel like you need to task a defender to stop it.
I mean, the thing about pushing the opposition player is what you need to do is get one of your own players between you and him. Then you can push your own player. That's fine, and he gets the other player out of the way.
So you need a defender that's got a really good something get purchased on a player, like it's got a really sort of meaty torso or something, just like a perfect handle. Get a handle on a defender, and then it would be a much better. I mean, look, the thing is, Lars, I thought like we talked. United were more interesting. It was more interesting to see how United have developed. You talked a lot about their midfield because we were expecting Sesko to start and then he didn't. And so the lineup was perhaps not what we expected. And I mentioned Cunha in the intro, but like he was exciting. He is exciting, right?
Yeah, I mean, no one's doubting that Cunha is an exciting player, and that Cunha, because he's got so much initiative. He's completely fearless. He's not he tries difficult things. I mean, he's certainly someone who will raise the floor, I guess, of a not very good team, because you can stick him in any team and he will still do the Matthias Cunha things. I thought Mbeumo was pretty good as well. Made some good runs, and I guess really my surprise was you had that trio. I mean, you had Mason Mount in there, but he was playing in an attacking role. And then you had Fernandes and Casemiro in midfield. And I got to be honest, I kind of thought the Arsenal midfield of Rice, Subimendi and Ødegaard would kind of overrun that. And we didn't really see that happening. So all credit to Man United, who looked more aggressive and sharper physically than they did last year. Players just kind of looked a little bit more confident in this system and where they're supposed to be, which you would expect after a full preseason working on it, but they did. I thought Lenny Yoro had some good moments bringing the ball out from the back, and we kind of forget about him because of the fact that he got really badly injured when they first signed him, but he's still just 19 and is considered an incredibly promising defender. So there were, as much as it sounds silly, the thing Amorim said about, we've proven we can beat anyone, I just think there were a lot of positives there. I came away from this game thinking this was a lot better from United than I had expected. And I also, just on the Arsenal side of things, it did also occur to me that out of what we think will be the top three, I think Arsenal are the team who, more than City and more than Liverpool, are kind of happy sitting back and protecting a lead like they had to here. Like, I mean, they can sit back and trust their defense and goalkeeper in a way I think very few teams can in the league at the moment. So I think they maybe trusted them a little too much. I think they gave them you're not always going to get away with conceding as many chances as they did here, but they do have that defensive resilience to fall back on Arsenal, which got them 3 points here.
Quickly, Nicky, what did you make of Gyökeres?
Again, I'm back in my August football, and taking too much from it is silly. He didn't have a good first game. The service to him wasn't great. I think there was just a lot of, depending on how you view it, either rust or just some slightly worrying stuff in that Arsenal performance, wasn't there? I mean, if Gyökeres is going to thrive, you're going to need to lean into what suits him as a striker, which is getting those balls into the box. But then some of that starts at, how did Bukayo Saka play? I thought Saka had a really not his best game at all. I thought he was giving away the ball too easily a couple of times when he got into that space on the right hand side. You thought, okay, this is a Bukayo Saka moment, right? He's one-on-one with the defender, and he was losing it. He wasn't winning those battles. And I think without that sort of support, it's hard to see that Gyökeres makes an easy transition into this team. But he did look like a bit of a foreign object. I think certainly, as the guys just been saying, the contrast with how well integrated Bueno and Cunha looked on the other end was really marked. And I do agree with what Lars was just saying. Like, I think that on the one hand, yes, Arsenal, this is kind of what they do. They are, of that top group, extremely good defensively. You can't expect to keep defending with your 1-goal leads and never get punctured. You're never going to get away with that for a full season. Raya made a great save from Cunha on that one shot across goal, and another day he doesn't, right? As good as that save is, as much as having a good goalkeeper is part of your team, another day he doesn't. And even if you concede that goal, you don't even necessarily get a draw, do you? You don't know how the game goes after that. So I think all across the pitch, it was not spectacular. I think everyone's going to hone in on Gyökeres and go, you spent that money, why isn't he brilliant right away? He wasn't brilliant. His touch didn't look great. He looked a bit sluggish, but I think that's as much about the service to him and how the team is working around him as it is about him individually.
Yeah, I think we can still say, do Arsenal need to sign a striker? Right, let's go to Anfield. Liverpool 4, Bournemouth 2. The season kicked off on Friday night. I mean, before the game, Barry, the tributes to Diogo Jota here, and actually at Molineux as well, were incredibly moving, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty much what we were expecting, I suppose. His wife was at both grounds, and that must have been at once difficult and maybe a little cathartic for her. And I think his parents might have been at Anfield and Molineux as well. And obviously we wish them well. But both clubs handled it perfectly. I can't think of any. Both clubs and both sets of fans handled it. Difficult occasions brilliantly, I thought.
Salah's tears at the end are, you sort of wonder, is that just sort of a release for someone, like playing the game is, you're just in that intense moment, and when it finishes and you sort of have that feeling. And of course they played pre-season game, but I wonder, I don't know, I found myself very moved watching Mo Salah at the end of that game. And actually Charlie Baker on the radio made a really good point to me on Saturday that when Chiesa comes on, that is the moment when Jota probably would have come on the pitch, right? It felt like such a Jota moment for him. And the Chiesa moment, I mean, I like Carragher going, this is an odd substitution, but Nicky, like, what a moment for Chiesa, who's had a really difficult time. You've spoken for years about how much you love this player, and like, it was a brilliant finish as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since he's looked anything like the explosive talent we thought he was going to become after Euro 2020. But I will say that this is exactly what I think has been the best of Chiesa's career. I think in the end, even before he came to Liverpool, I was saying, is he just one of those players who is at his best as a super sub, who is at his best when you let him come off the bench and arrow at people in that way he does so effectively? And this felt like a little blast from the past in that regard, that ability to when you've already been playing an extremely intense game, because this is a great game of football to watch, really, really intense game of football. Then you suddenly throw this guy on who will go right at you like that. I think he's at his best, can do that brilliantly. And yeah, from an Italian standpoint, and from just the point of view of he's of wishing well for someone whose career hasn't gone the way you or he would have hoped it would have done. And with injuries and everything, it was fun to see him come on and be influential like that.
And perhaps the most interesting part of this game, Lars, was just Liverpool's openness. Producer Josh saying, is it Ange slot? Because you've got like Frimpong and Kirkes, they're wingers, aren't they? They're overlapping wingers. They're beyond wingers. And, without Gravenberch, and maybe he solves everything, I don't know, they just leave so many holes.
Yeah, this is kind of my worry about them going into the season in terms of them winning the league, as a lot of people have predicted them to do. They might have to score 3 or 4 in a lot of games, because I think they're going to concede a fair few, just from the nature of playing essentially wing back. Frimpong and Kirkes both extremely attacking fullbacks, as you say. Salah is still brilliant, but he's not doing much off the ball, and maybe you can expect him to. You want him to conserve his energy for the moments when he can make an impact in front of goal. But then, Wirtz is a proper number 10 attacking guy, and the two sort of ostensibly holding midfielders, like the slightly deeper midfielders, are McAllister and Szoboszlai, who are definitely not defensive players at all. So you're kind of left with Van Dijk and Konate being the defenders who are there to defend. And I think against a lot of teams, that will get you into some trouble. And you allowed Bournemouth to counterattack their way back into the game here. And Bournemouth deserve credit for not, rolling over, of course. But I think a lot of teams will look at that lineup and say that is absolutely terrifying when it's running at you, but you can get at them if you can just avoid conceding 4 or 5 goals.
Yeah, I mean, Ekitike had a good game, but I thought, Barry, in the Kite off, I thought Diakite was actually more impressive than Ekitike. And also the game, I thought, Baz, was like a good reminder when we spend a summer talking about transfers that lots of players who are already at clubs are good.
Yes.
And lots of players at Bournemouth are good. Antoine Semenyo is good. Just because he didn't go anywhere, it doesn't mean he's not good and interesting.
Yeah, and he had a brilliant game. I mean, his 2 goals were superb. The cross from David Brooks for the first one was wonderful, and his finish was great. His second goal, I mean, he just ran in a straight line from one penalty to the other and scored with a lovely finish. But you're thinking, is he getting that goal if Ryan Gravenberch is there? You'd think not. But I couldn't believe the ease with which he scored it. While it was a terrific goal, he literally just ran in a straight line.
Konate was sort of spinning around. It was like Konate was looking for Mark Gay. He was like, is Mark Gay? Where's Mark Gay? I don't know. It was really funny.
I know there were runners to his left and right sort of acting as decoys, but it was so easy for him. It looked more like an American football move. And it's a shame he was racially abused. But he had the last laugh, and it was nice to see. Well, he didn't really have the last laugh because Bournemouth went on to lose, but you know what I mean.
But he did have a brilliant game. I do. Just on that, 47-year-old man's been arrested after Antoine Semenyo reported being racially abused during the game. He posted, "Last night at Anfield will stay for me forever, not because of one person's words, but because of how the entire football family stood together. To my Bournemouth teammates who supported me in that moment, to the Liverpool players and fans who showed their true character, to the Premier League officials who handled it professionally, thank you. Football showed its best side when it mattered most. Scoring those goals felt like speaking the only language that truly matters on the pitch. This is why I play, for moments like this, for my teammates, for everyone who believes in what this beautiful game can be. The overwhelming messages of support from across the football world remind me why I love this sport. We keep moving forward together." And I mean, actually, Nicky, beyond the obvious depressing nature, and maybe this is too glass half full, because, how depressing that on the opening day this happens. And actually, Matthias Tell was already, racially abused online by Tottenham fans after missing a penalty in the Super Cup. The way Semenyo put that, and actually the sort of humanity you saw in the moment, and like the process that we talk about, how do we deal with these things? Even when Anthony Taylor just like put his hand on his arm and just said, like, "Are you okay?" before they started playing again. I don't know. I felt kind of, I don't know what the right word is. Not enthused, but just kind of like, it felt like people were taking this seriously.
Yeah, I definitely felt like people were taking it seriously, and certainly having covered a few incidents in Serie A over the last few years, there was a sense of relief that no one turned around and tried to make it, well, maybe said something to provoke them, because that's happened a few times in stories that I've covered, and it's incredibly disheartening when it does. So that much of it is positive. I don't know how much I want to go with you on the glass half full, because I do feel like the stuff is so present online now, and that's a whole story of its own, which maybe it's better not to spin into. But but it's so present online now, and it does feel like some of that online stuff is spilling more and more into the real world.
And actually, Kieran Maguire said it on the Future of Football thing that empowers, and also the way that some very high profile people in the world, be they in politics or just sort of influencers, speak, that empowers people to act like that. And that whole idea that it is not for me to say glass half full, of course, because the white privilege is that doesn't happen to you, right? If you are white, any player or anyone. So yeah, it was incredibly depressing, but I thought Semenyo's statement was nice to hear anyway. Liverpool have signed Giovanni Leone from Parma, who is very sought after. Can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's very young, and the amount that we've actually seen him play is still relatively little, but extremely highly thought of. Absolutely a young talent who is had been already being touted as someone we're expecting to see break through into the national team in the next few years, and who has been compared to Andrea Barzagli in his style as someone who really and Barzagli was one of the really, really great cool heads and man markers when he was playing in that BBC defence at Juventus. So really it started half a season of top flight football, but certainly someone who there's high expectations for, and who I'm intrigued to see, and certainly it feels like with a lot of young Italian players, taking that step to come play in the Premier League is perceived as taking a step towards being more ambitious and testing yourself in what is perceived to be right now the most competitive league in Europe, and giving yourself a chance to develop there.
Ted says the unfiltered joy that Max must feel that deliberate swiping handballs are allowed in the Premier League now. Happy for you, friend. Senesi's blatant handball was really fun, Barry. I just couldn't believe. Well, I sort of think it's a difficult decision to send him off, but at the same time, it's such an obvious handball that VAR just balls it up.
Yeah, I don't know how they missed it. I do wonder. I don't like ragging on officials, but I do wonder sometimes how they come up with certain decisions, and that was one of them. It could not have been more blatant. I do think there is it's an issue that, and we know for a fact it has happened in the past because Mike Dean has admitted he's done it while working as a VAR official, that they are afraid or don't want to undermine their mates on the pitch. I think that is a problem.
Anyway, that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll begin with Sunderland, who beat West Ham 3-0. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. Live show, still a few tickets available. September the 11th at the Troxy in London. Jonathan Wilson, Johnny Lou. Nicky, you're coming along. Have you got your anecdote prepared? Will it shift 2,100 tickets?
A few tickets, is it? I hope so. I don't know. Probably, maybe. Who knows? It's not. People have bought tickets. They're not all available. That'd be sad, wouldn't it? You can get them at theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live, and we're live streaming it around Earth. Tickets from the same link, and follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, etc. Sunderland 3, West Ham 0. Ian Dowie, presumably not that one, says, does Barry want Sunderland to draw the real big boys of Europe in next season's Champions League, or would he prefer a kind of group stage draw so they can go deeper, maybe win it? I mean, yes, did Ian not notice the change of format? But I suppose you could still have tougher games in the Swiss league system. But for 2 sweet hours, Barry, you were top of the Premier League.
Yeah, on alphabetical order above Tottenham, so that was nice. And I said this to a friend, we're top of the league above Spurs in alphabetical order. And he went, but they should be above you, because he forgot they're called Tottenham, not Spurs. Anyway, yeah, I'm surprised and a little disappointed we didn't lead with this one, Max, today. It was a great win. I'll be honest, it wasn't entirely unexpected win. I when I saw Sunderland's opening fixtures, I thought, ooh, they're nice. They're kind. And West Ham at home
as kind
is
probably as it gets.
Nice. As kind as it gets for the opening day. Now, to be fair, West Ham were on top in the first half, and it took a brilliant interception by Dan Ballard to stop them taking the lead through Malik Diouf, who got in the end of a Jared Bowen cross. But second half, Sunderland were totally dominant, scored 3 goals. This is a team that had 7 debutants in it. Another one came on, Alderete, when Jensen Seelt had to go off with an injured back. I feel a bit for him because a young Dutch player who signed about 2 years ago, but he's never really got a run out because he keeps getting injured. He got a chance on the opening day and had to go off injured again after landing awkwardly while contesting a handball. But Sunderland scored 3 good goals, were emphatic winners. I'm delighted. Burnley away next week on the evidence of what I've seen so far. That's another 3 points in the bag. I'm really getting ahead of myself now. So brilliant positive start for Sunderland. And obviously, as Nicky says, football in August is a lie, but that was a very worrying performance from a West Ham perspective.
Yeah, it was.
Because their players just didn't even look fit, let alone bothered.
Yeah. The 2010, the last time Sunderland won a Premier League game. And
hold on, that can't be right.
2010 was the last time Sunderland won a Premier League game in August. Did I say August? Did I say that?
No.
Oh, right.
No, you said Premier League game full stop.
I mean, they've been through the mill, but they're not that fucking bad.
Amazing those times they stayed up without winning a match. Yeah, it's a crucial bit to leave out, wasn't it? I mean, that's the thing is, if you haven't been in the Premier League for a while, Lars, there's just something about it, be it that like just wanting it, like the players, the fans, the noise was just brilliant there.
Yeah, it looked great. And it's also it's just watching bits of this. They've assembled. It's kind of fun watching because, of course, there's been a lot of talk about Xhaka going there and as the sort of experienced guy. But he's got so many young players around him. You know, you've got Xhaka in the middle of midfield, but then on one side of him is Diarra, who's 21. On the other side is Sadiki, who's 20. So you got and up front, you got. I mean, the Rig is what 18. Isidore is 24, and I mean, you've got all these young guys who are just kind of zooming around, and they had a lot of energy, a lot of effort. Because West Ham kind of had the majority of possession, it allowed Sunderland to kind of counter, and they looked snappy and quick. But I think you touched on it. This is a nightmare for Potter and West Ham. Like, he's immediately shot to the head of the sack race. Bit harsh, maybe, after one game. He's gotten a vote of confidence from Karen Brady. That seems alarming, and it's just kind of. You go up to Sunderland, they're playing 3 at the back, and the first 2 goals they concede are just kind of crosses that are just kind of lifted. I mean, the first one is a pretty high cross that's kind of lofted in there. And if you're playing 3 centre halves, and one of your wing backs is Wan-Bissaka, who's built like a centre half anyway, you should have enough beef there to like deal with these sort of big lofty balls into the box. Like, that should be the one thing that you're not worried about when you're going into that game. So conceding 2 goals from a service like that, and then conceding the third one off your own corner. Like, this is very worrying stuff, I have to say. As someone who is, generally speaking, Graham Potter positive, I am a Graham Potter enjoyer, I have to say I'm quite concerned by that.
Barry mentioned about there being 7 debutants in the team, but all 3 goals scored by players who were playing with Sunderland last season, weren't they, in the Championship? Yeah. So something in that as well, I think, when you talk about the enthusiasm of coming up to a new league and then combine that with what Lars was saying about the youth of the team, I think there's definitely a bit of that carryover energy, it feels like, in this team to start the season. For
that Ballard header, Guy Mowbray on Match of the Day said, you know, for fans with long memories, that's Nicky Summerby to Niall Quinn. I was like, God, that makes me feel older than, you know, when a player born in 07. I don't want to be a fan with a long memory. You know, I want that to be, I was saying to Barry, I want that to be Dennis Stewart and Jim Baxter, you know, just sort of names that I've heard of, but I never saw play. Like, I did predict West Ham, Burnley and Wolves to go down, so stop the season now. Burnley lost 3-0 at Tottenham, and this was there are reasons for enthusiasm, Lars, I think, with Spurs. We did our preview pods before the Super Cup, so I've had 2 Tottenham games with 2 very different setups against 2 very, I think it's fair to say PSG and Burnley are quite different football teams. They approached them differently. You know, with the Super Cup, it was just like Kevin Danso's long throws. With this, they played a more attacking team. And I've never seen Richarlison, Kudus looks great, I've never seen Richarlison play like this, even if August is a lie.
I have seen Richarlison play well before. People have kind of forgotten that Richarlison had a couple of good years playing for Everton, but of course being like the recognised starting number 9 for Brazil for a little while there. Richarlison is not a terrible player. Like he's gone through a period where things haven't quite gone his way, but there's something in him. I kind of always like the aggression that he brings, and great finishes. Kudus looks like a very Tottenham player, doesn't he? As a sort of maverick who is a little bit unhinged, but is someone who can create something out of very little, good in tight spaces, very technically clever. And I thought it was interesting that Thomas Frank decided to start with both Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall in the midfield there. I guess he realized this is a game where you're expecting to control possession a little bit. This is a game where you can give minutes to these very young guys. I mean, you had, again, there's been a lot of me listing ages so far in this pod, but Archie Gray is 19, Lucas Bergvall is 19, and actually Pop Sarr is 22. So that is a very young midfield you start with there. Again, possibly because it's Burnley and it's at home, so it's a pretty comfortable time to give those some minutes. But I thought Bergvall looked very good. I mean, he has this wonderful athleticism and runs really well with the ball. A lot of positives here, but it is also the caveat that it was Burnley. And it should also be said that when it was still 1-0, Spurs did seem quite insistent on letting Burnley back into the game. Like before Spurs made it 2-0, I actually think Burnley had the more shots in the game. Except Burnley are not very good, so they weren't able to take any of those shots. But I was a little bit worried by that. Good to see a Tottenham manager adjust to circumstances. Good to see that tactics are now a thing that's happening. But this is a game you should always win, and they won it.
Yeah. We should just spend a minute, Barry, on the second Richarlison goal. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've got a minute in my locker for
Go on, 10
It was
seconds.
a very good Kudus cross and a brilliant scissors kick. Very acrobatic and nailed it. Brian Mbeumo, I think, cried something similar for Manchester United. Wasn't able to pull it off. But an excellent goal from Richarlison.
Bob says, can we all celebrate the enforcement of the 8-second rule? My old man is bringing a stopwatch to St James's Park next weekend to use on the opposition only. Yes, Nicky, we got our first 8-second corner. How did you feel about it?
The 8-second rule is interesting. I think the 8-second rule, and not to jump ahead to a different game this weekend, but it's one of a few rules that came to the fore this weekend where you just think, okay, but are you going to do that all season, and are you going to do it consistently? Because great, if you want to stop keepers from having the ball and wasting time, I like it. I like the 8-second rule. I like the idea of punishing it and giving the opposition something that isn't completely unreasonable. A corner is something that's valuable, but it's not like giving them a penalty or something stupid. But yes, do I believe that this was enforced evenly across the whole weekend? I'm not sure it was. And so therefore, where's the consistency going to be and not be is the question I have.
No, you're absolutely right. And also, I mean, I was praying that David Raya got done after 7 seconds, just for the internet to light up.
Can I say that I actually think this is a rule that even if it's enforced inconsistently, I'm all for it. Maybe it can be one of those things. Sometimes the goalkeeper can hang on to it. Sometimes, no, that's a corner. And it'll just be an element of danger. At least the goalkeepers know they need to hurry up a little bit or they risk losing the ball. I think that's fine. I think if you're going to nitpick over this like an insane person on the internet, then, good luck to you. But I think that I think it's still progress, even if it's not completely consistently applied.
It's made for internet videos with like 4 keepers in split screens with clocks underneath them, 9 seconds, 12 seconds, 7. It's perfect. Let's go to Molyneux. Nicky, talk to us about Tijjani Reijnders, right? Lots of people, this will be the first time they've seen him play. A goal, an assist, and actually even better, the opening goal, that run and the little dink to Rico Lewis. You will have seen more of him from his time at AC Milan. Will we see this every week?
Well, every week is a big question again. I think there's always 2 parts of the story, and Wolves were not good. Yeah, he's a brilliant player, and he was a brilliant player last season at Milan. Definitely, you would have said one of the absolute best midfielders in Serie A last season. But it was definitely kind of eye-opening seeing him playing in a good team, seeing like, oh, actually now, and if you actually surround him with other good players, look what he can do, and look at the freedom he's going to take, because he looked like he was having a ball, didn't he? I mean, he really looked like he was having the absolute time of his life out there. He was clearly feeling empowered to make those runs forward, which he does so well. He's such a brilliant box-to-box player, and he carries the ball so well, and he absolutely looked so I suppose to contrast what we were saying before about Gyökeres maybe still looking like a bit of a foreign object in this Arsenal team, none of that with Reijnders. And I think that's where you see the benefit of where actually he kind of joined at the end of last season, didn't he? Because he went to the Club World Cup. And when we were talking about the Club World Cup in the summer, we were saying, well, it's not really the 25-26 season yet. It's the end of the 24-25. And he kind of got a bonus bit of time there. And I think he clearly is looking like someone who's had that moment to get settled in, to understand teammates' movements, to know where Haaland's going to be with his runs. He is absolutely this player. He is again, and I think at Milan showed this definitely, despite being on a great team, a tremendous box-to-box runner who absolutely has that vision and that anticipation, I think, in terms of where he puts his passes. I think sometimes at Milan he was just asked to do a bit too much because they didn't have the depth of quality around him. And I think seeing him be given that bit of, I suppose, freedom to just play the game he wants to play is what's going to bring him on to another level again.
Yeah, it's probably a slightly unfair comparison for AC Milan, but it reminds me of Paul Merson when he said when he went to Walsall, he was playing all these brilliant passes, but just no one was running, and so he looked absolute shite. I mean, he is Reijnders. He's like Kevin De Bruyne, Barry, but who looks like a footballer. You know, that's what I thought. He's doing the same thing, but in a sort of graceful way.
Yeah, I was hugely impressed with him. He seems to glide rather than run. He's got great vision. He took his goal really well. Provided was one or if not two assists. City were clearly the standout team, I think, over the weekend, them and Sunderland. I don't think Sunderland will be challenging them for the title. A bit of a statement win from them against a Wolves team who were okay until they went 1-0 down, and then that was sort of it, lights out.
Yeah, I suppose that's, the thing about City is, not many people have predicted them to win the league. I have stopped the season now, but there are a lot of unknowns in there, aren't they, Lars?
There are, and we didn't really see any of them tested here. I mean, my question mark is always how well this will hold up defensively, because they have a lot of attack-minded players on the field there. But it certainly worked really well. Exciting to see. I mean, the Norwegian in the room here. We had 4 Norwegians starting in this game. We had Oscar Bob. For all the money City have spent on this rebuild, Oscar Bob is starting on the first match day of the season. And Oscar Bob is such a strange. He is 22, but just because he's gone through the City Academy and he hasn't been on loan anywhere, we haven't seen him play a lot of football. We did see him start to break through, and it did look, in the preseason for last season, it looked like he was going to be a big part of that team before he picked up that really bad injury. And Guardiola seems to really, really like him. And I thought he looked absolutely like he belonged there, having a nice assist for the first goal, but also having a couple of dribbling raids that were quite impressive. And for all the talk of signings and rebuild and all this, maybe Bob, look out for him.
Forest 3, Brentford 1. Nicky, we questioned on the preview pods whether Chris Wood could really do it again within 5 minutes. Yes. And actually, he takes both goals brilliantly. Like this is elite centre forward play.
Yeah, no, Chris Wood, what more do people want as evidence that he's a top-level centre forward? I mean, there's always levels and levels, right? You don't have to sit there and say, oh, and therefore he's Erling Haaland. But he's scores goals in the Premier League consistently, and because he's got the technique and the timing to do that. He doesn't do it by accident. I have to admit that my eye was drawn a bit in this one, in what felt like one of those weird weekends which you get sometimes at the start of the season. You're like, which league am I watching again? Because of course we've just been talking about Reijnders, but Dan and Doy, who last season was great for Bologna as well. Really a bit of a weird. I don't know why. I obviously knew that he'd gone there, but still it felt like a bit of a shock seeing him there playing for Forest and scoring as well. So really fascinated to see how he pans out, because he was definitely a big part of Bologna. Well, he literally scored the goal that won them their first trophy in half a century in the cup final, the Coppa Italia final, back in May, I guess it was. But he was kind of forced to play all over the attack at Bologna, because really where he wants to play on the right-hand side, you had Riccardo Orsolini, and so getting to see him immediately starting on the right for Forest, I think that is his best home, and I think he's got that, a bit like I was saying with Chiesa before, that directness and ability to just run inside at people, and I think he's going to be really interesting to watch. So yeah, Chris Wood, still Chris Wood, but I'm also interested to see how Dan and Doy pans out there.
Yeah, Elliot Anderson's pass for Wood's second was, and that was, that slide rule. That's what slide rule was. That's what I'm trying to say, Barry. It was really great. I wanted to ask you actually more about Morgan Gibbs-White, because they did really well to keep him. And, he seems to be having a good time.
Yeah, he was as good, I think, as I've ever seen him play. He almost capped a splendid performance with a brilliant goal, but it put it over the bar. He was everywhere. He looked incredibly enthusiastic. That was a slight concern of mine after seeing the interview where he signed his new and improved deal and was standing beside Evangelos.
Were you surprised Marinakis wasn't just next to him on the pitch at all times? I'm not saying he'd keep up.
I think Marinakis would have struggled to keep up with him. Or he might have sent one of his protection detail out to follow him around. I'd imagine those lads are fairly fit. Yeah, it was a brilliant performance and very much put to bed my minor concerns that Gibbs White might be playing under duress.
Josh says, please don't talk about Brentford. We're still trying to figure it out. Yeah, a bit like the opening for West Ham. It's a tough start for them. Like Forest away is a difficult game. Yes,
I think Forest caught Brentford on the hop because it wasn't the Forest we're used to seeing. They were very front foot, aggressive. They weren't sitting back playing on the counter. And I just think Brentford weren't expecting that and didn't know how to deal with it. But they gave a better account of themselves in the second half after being totally blitzed in the first.
Yes, but also the goals they concede are so disappointing if you're Brentford. Like, conceding first from a set piece shouldn't happen, or it can happen, obviously, but if you're Brentford, that's like one of the things you can control and one of the things you can work on. The second, again, it's a cross into the box. It's a really good cross by Gibbs White, but it's not the kind of thing that should really happen. And the third is like a daft giveaway that, again, you can't be doing that. And it just reminds me, again, the thing that Thomas Frank would say when he was coach for Brentford is that for a team like Brentford to survive in the Premier League, it's all about, winning your duels, running like demons, and winning your set piece battle. That's just kind of the three basics that you have to do in every game. And I didn't think they really did those things in this game, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, they've completed a club record deal of up to $42.5 million for Dango Ouattara from Bournemouth. Forest have also brought in Amari Hutchinson and James McAtee on 5-year contracts. They're both good players, aren't they? Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin at Stamford Bridge. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Chelsea 0, Palace 0. So not a modern day classic. I think interesting that Eze and Gay both started for Palace. And you alluded to this, Nicky, the goal that was disallowed. And I guess Gay was too close to the wall when the ball is struck brilliantly by Eze. So it's the right decision, but I don't like it. I don't like that. I think find a way of making that a goal, I think.
Well, I think this is just goes back to exactly what I was saying before, because within minutes of this happening, I'm seeing, maybe it wasn't even minutes, maybe it was seconds. I'm seeing on social media, someone's found a Chelsea free kick that they've scored in the last couple of years that this exactly the same thing happens. And it's a rule that was introduced in 2019. And so clearly it hasn't been being consistently applied over the last 6 years. And maybe we don't apply any of these rules consistently. And maybe that's part of why we all keep coming back and watching this silly game, is because we like to have these arguments about why one team got one thing and the other one got the other thing. But it certainly, as a spectacle, feels sad when you see a great goal and then you have to imagine it never happened. And I think certainly the thing that everyone was pointing out for poor Eze is he did exactly the same thing on the first day of last season. Different reason for it being disallowed. In fact, the whistle that time as he was striking it. But last season he opened the season with a even better free kick off the inside of the post, and that got disallowed. And then this happens. The rule's the rule. I'm not here to argue that the referee shouldn't apply the rules. Aside from this, wasn't especially. I think that's part of why it feels like it's a little bit sadder. Is the game wasn't especially sparkling, and so you've got the one sparkling moment of the game that really made you jump out of your seat. Doesn't actually count. But again, The rule's the rule. If they want to apply it, they're going to apply it.
Yeah, Darren England, I wonder if all refs have that voice. I've got a sense they probably all do, unless it's like a tape recording. I do think at the end of the season, Barry, maybe we'll do a blind voice, like The Voice. We'll sit on big red chairs, and then you'll just hear one ref going, I've disallowed the goal, offside, And then, then they don't all sound like that. And then you press your button, if you know it is, and you spin around and you announce, I think that is Peter Banks. But the interesting thing is on Eze, right? Is that his last game? We don't know. Like Glasner seemed to say afterwards, maybe he'll play in the Europa Conference League qualifier they've got on Thursday. The ovation, then you're reading into things, right? His ovation to the fans when he was taken off looked quite final. Mark Gay ignored Glasner. Mystic Baz Stradamus. What's going to happen to those two this week?
It looks like Eze is going to go to Spurs. I think Crystal Palace have always given the impression that they'd be open to selling Gay. And I don't know what's going to happen, is the answer. I mean, Palace are now, I think they haven't lost any of their last 10 games, and I thought they were the better team yesterday, I have to say. I don't think Henderson, he had to make one save, I think. Now, I'm only saw highlights of this game because I watched Forest Brentford. As far as I can tell, Henderson only made one save, which was a Delap shot straight at him, and a couple of Chelsea players ballooned over the bar when they should have hit the target. But I thought Palace were the better team. Another great performance from Adam Wharton. I hope he stays there. If they lost Wharton, Eze and Gay, I don't care how good Glasner is, it's going to be hard to...
Yeah, and to lose them so late with the window closing in 12 days. Yeah, it's a stat from Colin Miller saying their last 10 games have included Arsenal away, Liverpool away, Chelsea away, Spurs away, a semi-final versus Villa, a final versus Man City, Community Shield versus Liverpool. They're unbeaten in all those 10 games and won 2 trophies. And actually, I thought their starting 11 looked more balanced than Chelsea's. They had very young centre-back Chelsea. I think Maresca wants a centre-back, but, I think Todd Bowley only wants to sign strikers. I had fun tweeting, maybe Chelsea should sign some attackers, lol, just to see what the internet would do with that. They weren't happy. What did you make of it from a Chelsea point of view?
I was just going to say, in terms of who played the better game, Chelsea had way more of the ball, but it kind of depends how you define a better game. I thought Palace's defending was really exceptional. That was the thing. They let Chelsea have the ball, and this was picked up really well as well on Match of the Day on Sunday. Saturday, Sunday, I've lost all sense of time. They were constantly pressing in twos. They were letting 2 men shut the ball down every time and cutting down angles for their Chelsea players to go anywhere with it. So Chelsea had a lot of the ball, but they didn't do a lot with it. And I think that's a bit of... There's 2 sides to that, isn't that? One is, Chelsea creative enough? But the other one is, yes, Palace's defending was really, really impressive, as it was last season.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Esteval for Chelsea, Lars. But, if you are a Chelsea fan, you've spent all this money and all these players going forward, and you don't score at home to Palace, you're a bit sad walking out of Stamford Bridge, I think.
Yeah, and I did think there was a bit of a lack of a spark there. Now, maybe that is easily explained by what Nicky just explained, that Palace were defending really diligently, and that's true. But I'm just expecting that in a game where Chelsea have as much control as they do, and they have as much possession, they're at home, Palace aren't really threatening a lot. You'd think that would be like prime Cole Palmer territory to like do something fancy. Or if not Cole Palmer, one of the other bazillion attackers they brought in. Neto was there and played football. Estevao came on, he's very young, but of course he showed a couple of moments of something. I was kind of expecting something from this very, very expensively assembled group that some people are arguing could be title challengers this season. Again, against a tough nut to crack. But I just thought it was just a little bit not great. So that's very unscientific. Not great punditry, perhaps, but it felt a little flat. Maybe... we can start making excuses for them. They've not had a lot of time off this summer. Maybe this was a team that could have done with another week of holiday, possibly. But everything was just kind of there for them. And since this was a home game, a lot of control, time for the fancy players to do the fancy things, and no one really did the fancy things.
Let's go to the Amex. Brighton 1, Fulham 1. You predicted Brighton to be 4th, Barry. You said they left a lot of points on the table last season, and they did again.
Yes. 2 points dropped, very much so. They should have won this game, and they didn't. And that's Brighton for you. They left 22 points out there last season, and they've already left 2 out there this season. Throwing away leads is something they do against. And look, teams throw away leads, but you should be able to close out a game like this against Fulham at home. And they couldn't do it. They missed a good chance to go 2 up before Fulham nicked their late equaliser. But I wouldn't worry too much yet. Fulham had 2 penalty shouts in this game, I will say that. One of them was I think definitely a penalty where
Is that the IR?
Josh King had the back of his heel his heel kicked by Ayari, and the ref didn't spot it, and VAR didn't see fit to overturn it. Marco Silva was very unhappy about those. But Brighton had the pick of the chances. They went 1-0 up through the penalty after Sanderberg brought down Jorginho Rutter. Brighton will see that as 2 points dropped, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Marco Silva did celebrate like Tardelli when the equaliser went in. James Milner has played in 17 opening games. He came off the bench. Frank Lampard, the only player ahead of him with 18. I saw somewhere that he was the only person born in the 80s who played in the Premier League at the weekend. Finally, Villa 0, Newcastle 0. No Alexander Isak in the squad, Lars. Felt like a game Newcastle might have won if they'd had Alexander Isak playing.
Yeah, if they had a centre forward. I mean, it was such a weird game because Newcastle obviously had the better of it and were the better team even before the sending off. Newcastle very, very comprehensively won the midfield battle. I thought that the Newcastle midfield is very, very good, and Villa were struggling to get a passing game going. They were struggling to find any kind of rhythm in this. But when Newcastle did attack, they just wasn't like... Anthony Gordon's not a bad player, but he's not a centre forward, especially when you're like kind of pushing and you get into crossing positions and all this sort of stuff. You can't really launch it into Gordon in the mixer. That's not really what you want, right? And also by playing him in the middle, you're taking away the creativity that he brings when he's down the flanks. So that just didn't... I mean, that didn't seem to work for me. And it does bring hammer home the reality that they do need to resolve the situation. And actually, I think they need to sign a centre forward, even if Isak is staying, right? Because they do need a backup, and Osula is probably not it. They need to sign one forward. They probably need to sign two if Isak's going to go eventually. And I think that was the big thing this game was missing. A little bit worried about Villa. Okay, Newcastle are a good team, and they had a sending off after about 65 minutes thereabouts. But they had 3 shots over 90 minutes at home on the opening day of the season. That's not very good.
Nicky, how should the Isak situation be resolved if you were in charge of all of the pieces in the jigsaw?
I mean, this is a terribly unfair question to ask, Max, because as a fan of a team in the title race, I really would just love him to be anywhere not involved in the title race. I mean, I don't know. It's a horrible situation, is it, for Newcastle? You know how good this player is. You don't want to let him go somewhere that is going to harm you as a rival. At the same time, this is the reality of the Premier League. The Premier League is where all the money is. Where else is he going to go? There's not somewhere else that you can see him off to. So I don't honestly know, Max, what the happy resolution is to all of this in the end. And I also don't know that there's an amount of money that makes it all right when your owners are rich beyond imagining anyway. So I suppose for PSR reasons, it's good to bring in a good amount of money. But probably the happiest outcome for Newcastle is somehow persuading Isak that he doesn't want to be in the Premier League. He wants to go off to Saudi. But the more realistic answer is probably that... I mean, it's hard to give you an answer that isn't Liverpool, isn't it?
Sure. I like the idea that the exclusive is that Nicky wants him to rot in the reserve and never play football again.
Which is clearly not true, by the way, because he's a great footballer and he deserves to be thriving at a good club.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see how he, who advises you and what you decide to do, because obviously Eze and Gay take a risk by playing and getting a big injury, which could make a huge impact on their future earnings and their career. But they still both played, and Isak isn't. Leeds play Everton tonight. We'll cover that on tomorrow's pod. Sid also joining us. We'll find out how he's getting on. Some good news from Morecambe FC. The National League's approved the takeover by Punjab Warriors. Suspension on the club will be lifted upon receipt of the sale and purchase agreement. Transfer embargo will remain until player, staff, creditors and the HMRC have been paid. The season's yet to begin. 3 of their fixtures already postponed at the start of the season, so quite a lot of work to do. A lot of people messaged me in annoyance because Cambridge's failure to beat Harrogate at home cost them their ACCAs. I don't play for them. I'm not the manager. I'm not assistant coach of Cambridge United. But if it makes you feel better, they really should have won. Battered Harrogate for the first half.
That really isn't going to make them feel better.
No. And look, a lot of feedback on the preview pods. Many comments. not many happy Everton fans with you, Barry.
Yeah, I think Everton fans need to learn that just because I think Everton might finish 19th, that doesn't mean Everton will finish 19th. We'll see.
We'll see, yeah.
But I do fervently hope, after all the abuse I've got, that they get absolutely walloped by Leeds tonight.
Well, once again, that will make them feel better. Arsenal fans a bit annoyed with us as well. But the most annoyed people were Simpsons fans. I believe, Barry, it was your fault for mistakenly saying the monorail guy in The Simpsons built a monorail in Shelbyville, unless Johnny Lewis said it. As has been pointed out thousands of times, he helped put Brockway, Ogdenville and North Haverbrook on the map. But no mention of Shelbyville and the monorail there. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Nicky.
Thanks.
Cheers, Baz.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens.
This is The Guardian.